Todd Paparello from Bayer Pharmaceuticals, and I'm here to discuss engaging the U.S. Food and Drug Administration on the journey to transforming your innovation into a new treatment option. Before we get started into engaging the agency, I think it's important to have more of what I consider a public service announcement. I've had the opportunity to meet with many of our MassBio members, and one thing I've noticed is that one of the benefits they could gain is to have a regulatory consultant on board as quickly as possible, particularly when they're getting to the stage where they're going to be filing an application with the health authority, whether it's the US FDA or other health authorities, and testing the product in humans, or if they're getting to the stage where they're going to be working through the need to file a marketing application. So having a regulatory affairs consultant on board, I think, as a critical member of your development team is something to seriously consider as you work through your organizational team. Over the next few slides, I want to discuss ways that sponsors can engage the US FDA for efficient drug development. There are two main categories, of course: meetings and expedited programs. In terms of meetings, there are key milestone meetings that are included in this slide that it's important to engage the agency, and this will be encouraged, of course, and it will be mutually advantageous both to the sponsor as well as the FDA. You could have pre-IND meetings, end of phase 2 meetings, or pre-BLA or pre-NDA meetings. For pre-IND meetings, there are two particular meetings I would like to highlight. You could have a critical path innovation meeting, which provides an opportunity to discuss a new technology, methodology, or concept with the agency, such as for a biomarker or a clinical outcomes assessment. It, of course, does not substitute a formal pre-IND meeting. However, they are important meetings to consider, particularly around new technologies and methodologies. You could also consider an INTERACT meeting. INTERACT stands for Initial Targeted Engagement for Regulatory Advice on CBER Products. It's an informal, non-binding consultation with the Center of Biologics Evaluation and Research at FDA, and it enables sponsors to obtain preliminary information or advice around innovative investigational products at an early stage of development on issues that are not yet at the pre-IND meeting phase. Pre-IND meetings are also strongly encouraged. These are meetings where you would discuss the toxicology, the chemistry, manufacturing controls information, and all the preliminary information that you would have about your product that you could utilize in order to support an IND application to test the product in humans. End of phase 2 meetings are critical meetings as well. This is where you would engage the agency to discuss your larger late-stage registration trials. Generally, these occur after phase 2 as you design your phase 3 registration program, and you can get agreement on the dose and on the endpoints and on many other complex elements in order to ensure that the studies that are designed will support registration. Pre-NDA and pre-BLA meetings are also critical. These would occur 3 to 6 months prior to when you submit your application. You would review the content and format of the application, as well as evidence from the studies, safety and efficacy evidence that would support registration. There are different types of FDA meetings: Type A, Type B end of phase, and Type C. Type A meetings are really more for stalled development programs. These are programs where you received a clinical hold letter or a complete response to a marketing application. This is really where there is not much of a path forward, and an immediate meeting with the agency would be necessary. Type A meetings would usually occur within 30 days of when a briefing document and the meeting request combined is filed. There are Type B meetings, which are classified as Type B pre-IND and pre-NDA meetings. These will occur within 60 days of when the meeting request is filed. Type B end-of-phase meetings are very complicated meetings and complex meetings. And it's where the larger registrational studies are discussed, whether it's an end of phase 1, for example, for an oncology product where the phase 2 studies would constitute registration package, or end of phase 2, where you would have large phase 3 studies that would constitute the registration package. These end of phase meetings would take place within 70 days of when the meeting request is filed. For type C meetings, they are classified as all other types of scientific advice meetings that do not fall into the categories of type A, type B, or type B end of phase. I like to think of the meetings into 3 different buckets. And it's important to have some best practices for each meeting that you have with the agency. You should look at it as before the meeting, during the meeting, and after the meeting. Before the meeting, it's very important that you work with the regulatory project manager at FDA to establish an agreeable agenda and list of questions. When you think about your questions, it's important to submit questions that are focused and try to avoid open-ended questions. Provide your opinion and have the agency react to it. You should note that you should receive, within 48 hours prior to the meeting, comments, preliminary comments that the FDA will generate and share with you. It's important to have a meeting with the team to discuss them in detail and focus on the most important aspects for the meeting discussion. When you get to the meeting, it's important to note that presentations are not generally expected or even required. The discussion is the most important element. You should not be bringing new data or new information to a meeting that hasn't been requested by the agency. Generally, the agency hasn't had a chance to review it in advance and will most likely not react to that new information. Make sure that your questions have all been addressed during the meeting. And a lot of times, for example, if you have 4 or maybe even 10 questions, and question number 10 is the most important, it's probably best that you focus on that question first, so you can reorder the questions based on priority for the discussion. Before the meeting is complete, it's important to save enough time that you summarize your key discussion points, agreements, as well as action items. When you think about after the meeting, you should expect to receive the official FDA minutes within 30 days. It's also important that you review the minutes thoroughly. If there's any discrepancies, you need to notify the FDA as quickly as possible. Also, during that time, it's important to follow up on any action items or requests from the meeting. So the next slide shares the FDA Expedited Programs. So FDA has 5 expedited programs: Fast Track Designation, Breakthrough Therapy Designation, Accelerated Approval Pathway, Priority Review Designation, and Regenerative Medicine Advanced Therapy Designation. Fast Track Designation, Breakthrough Therapy Designation, and RMAT are designations that are obtained during the IND phase. Priority Review Designation pertains to marketing application during the marketing application review. And this designation is obtained at the time of the application filing. Accelerated approval is an approval pathway. So when a drug or indication receives an approval, it's either a full approval or accelerated approval. If the drug obtains an accelerated approval, it was based on a surrogate endpoint, and there will be a post-marketing requirement to conduct a confirmatory study. It's important to note that these designations consist of opportunities for products to be classified that are for a disease or condition that is serious and life-threatening. In terms of the criteria, so for Fast Track Designation, the drug is intended to treat a condition, and non-clinical or clinical data demonstrate that there is a potential to address an unmet medical need. For Breakthrough Therapy Designation, the drug is intended to treat a serious condition, and preliminary clinical evidence indicates that the drug may demonstrate substantial improvement on a clinically significant endpoint over available therapies. For accelerated approval, the drug treats a serious condition and generally provides a meaningful advantage over available therapies and demonstrates an effect on a surrogate endpoint that is reasonably likely to predict clinical benefit. For priority review, the application, original or a supplemental application for a drug, treats a serious condition and, if approved, would provide significant improvement in safety and effectiveness. And for RMAT designation, the drug must meet the definition of a regenerative medicine therapy, and the drug is intended to treat, modify, reverse, or cure a serious condition, and preliminary clinical evidence indicates that the regenerative medicine therapy has the potential to address an unmet medical need for a serious condition. Keep in mind, however, that when these designations are granted, particularly Fast Track, Breakthrough, and RMAT, they may be rescinded at any time if the product no longer meets the qualifying criteria. I just wanted to take a bit of time to share some insights regarding expedited programs. So all expedited programs are distinct designation programs with different programmatic requirements. Sponsors may apply and receive more than one designation for a given product, and sponsors should apply for each designation separately. So you could actually apply for Fast Track as well as Breakthrough designation, as well as accelerated approval pathway for the same product. When comparing Breakthrough Therapy, Fast Track designation, Breakthrough Therapy has all the same features of Fast Track. The one element that is also important for Breakthrough and Fast Track that you might want to consider is that they would allow you to have a rolling submission, which allows you to submit different parts of the application at a rolling time. However, you have to keep in mind once the final piece is submitted is when the NDA review starts. There are many definitions that I went through that you should be thinking about and are in all the guidance documents. So for serious disease or condition, unmet medical need, available therapy, surrogate endpoints, intermediate clinical endpoint, clinically significant endpoints, all these are provided in FDA guidance. It's very important to familiarize yourself with the definitions. A designation applies to a drug and a specific indication, and a separate request must be submitted for each proposed development program and/or indication. A designation can apply for a combination product as long as the primary mode of action is a drug or biologic. And more than one product can be granted an expedited program designation for the same indication. That concludes the presentation portion of my session, and I'm looking forward to an interactive Q&A session coming up.